Hey guys, quick fantasy baseball update from Fantasy Baseball on Deck, and I'm your guy, Austin. Specifically, going to talk about Rhys Hoskins just got carted off of the field with a apparent pretty brutal knee injury. I'm going to talk about kind of like what that means for the Phillies and the players that will benefit most from that. And then Rasiel Iglesias just hit the IL, and Wainwright actually just hit the IL today. So focusing back on Rhys Hoskins, last season he had his really first full healthy year that he's really ever had. Managed to hit 30 home runs across almost 600 at bats. So more of a quantity over quality guy, given how much playing time that he got. But what I did want to focus on and kind of the difference of or the meaning of his injury and what it means for both Alec Bohm and Darick Hall. Alec Bohm being more of like a high average guy, high contact guy, got just as many at bats last season, full-time player, only hit 13 home runs. Not a player that I'm super duper interested in. I was a couple years back, but the power just isn't really there to be super sustainable from a fantasy perspective. He's obviously a super young guy. That power can still come. The contact's good. 26 years old. Obviously, you can add to those power numbers. Just haven't seen it yet. But Darick Hall at 27 years old, smaller sample size, 136 at bats last season for a solid and rosterable 250 average. Hit 9 home runs across only 136 at bats, which equates to a 36 home run pace for a full season. So even more than Rhys Hoskins. And what's interesting about Darick Hall, he says that he's a DH here, but he's eligible at first base, and taking over that first base role on an everyday. Not only does the first base open up, but the meaning for Rhys Hoskins getting hurt means that not only does the first base slot open up on it as an everyday slot that needs to be filled, but also that DH slot opens up before, because Rhys Hoskins, every day that he was taking, any sort of break from first base, obviously they were slotting him into the DH. Kyle Schwarber trying to get him in the outfield as much as possible. He's slotting in the DH as well, but it really opens up a lot of opportunity for Darick Hall. Darick Hall, again, hitting for a 250 average. Obviously, you like to see him walk a little more. His on-base percentage is a little low, under 300, but just the fact that he hit for what was on pace to be a 36 home run guy is really valuable, and I guarantee that he's past the 300 in ranking. So super deep into your draft, if you are a keeper league or just a super depth roster, kind of week by week league, Darick Hall seems like he'd be a really, really solid pickup. And if we look at roster resource, because of that home run productivity, they haven't updated his plate appearance expectations, but they already have him slotted in as the 4 spot in that roster is going to score a lot of runs. And of all of the major stakeholders between Trey Turner, Schwarber, Realmuto, Hoskins, and then Castellanos and down the line, I think Hoskins was probably the lowest ceiling of all those guys in regards to production. And obviously it really helps too that he's left-handed. He's a left-handed hitter. So having a guy at the very end of your draft who's currently not ranked, absolutely available, it just seems like a lot of value potentially for sliding him into the 4 spot of the NL champs from last season. So keep an eye on Darick Hall. I think that'd be pretty solid pickup. Next, I'm going to talk about Rasiel Iglesias, and this is a huge, development. Rasiel Iglesias was acquired from the Angels last season at the trade deadline. He was brought in to be the setup man behind Kenley Jansen for a playoff Atlanta Braves team. Now that Kenley Jansen's moved on to the Boston Red Sox, it really was technically the optics were going to be Rasiel Iglesias as the primary closer, and then AJ Minter continuing his role as the setup man, being a 28-year-old or 29-year-old, homegrown prospect from Atlanta with the Braves per se. The thing is that Rasiel Iglesias just got injured today or got put on the IL today, and he's going to be given the opportunity, meaning AJ Minter is going to be given the opportunity to collect saves, at least for what seems like the first couple of weeks of the season. But the optics and the history is that AJ Minter has always been a setup guy behind a very reputable closer, whether it was Will Smith back a couple of years ago, now then Kenley Jansen, and now Rasiel Iglesias. But they traded for Rasiel Iglesias, and Iglesias has only been a setup role there as well. So if we really look at the optics, it's a neck and neck horse race to whoever is going to be that closer in Atlanta for a really, really solid Braves team, as we know, a world champions just a couple of years ago. With a really young roster, AJ Minter is going to get the opportunity to have that role, and I think he's going to keep it. Obviously, if you think about the loyalty and the investment from that franchise into AJ Minter, he playing there for what I understand is his entire career with the Atlanta Braves. It just seems like a solid lock. Obviously, yeah, all Atlanta his entire career. Why wouldn't you want to give that closer role to a guy who was one of the best relief pitchers in all of baseball last year and collected 34 holds across the season, which was the most in Major League Baseball? His stuff is electric, had a 2.057 ERA. So better stats all across the board than Rasiel Iglesias. You want the best man for the job. I hope that AJ Minter holds that position because he is the best man for the job. So look at AJ Minter, guarantee that he's not super high on your draft boards. Might be a really, really solid steal towards the end if you need a relief pitcher. And Adam Wainwright, this is a little less noteworthy. Adam Wainwright seems like he's has a groin issue and seems to be out for the first month of the year, being the ace of the St. Louis rotation. Not really any moves to be made from this. Obviously, he's an innings eater. Wainwright is got again essentially 180 to 190 to 200 plus innings per year. Not going to have a ton of strikeouts. His ERA was ballooned a little bit last year, but the only corresponding opportunity I think that comes from this is maybe one of their higher prospects from years before. Matthew Liberatore was a top 20 prospect in all of baseball a couple of years ago. He's been short of trying to figure out his way since coming up to the majors and getting a little bit of exposure. 34 innings isn't much, but I think it's one of those things where you give a guy sort of a spot start, understanding that he's going to go back to the minors. Just a lot of pressure for them to want to succeed in that moment. He's done really well across the minors in his career. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a long-term thing, but just a guy to keep your eye on. Look at Matthew Liberatore. I think that's going to be the dude that fills into that fifth man rotation spot in the beginning of the season just to take up innings. But given that he's going to have a full month to take on that role and really try to live up to those expectations, he might have an opportunity to fill in long term, given that the bottom of that rotation is not very good. So that's the end of the update. I really appreciate you guys supporting me always. And Darick Hall, AJ Minter, go get him or watch for him or whatever makes sense. All right, bye.